Question 4. A. Study the equation below and answer the questions that follow. So you have this equation here, which should be very, very familiar at this point. So you have part 1, name the process presented by the equation above, photosynthesis. How should we know this is photosynthesis? We're seeing light. This is the only equation that you would learn that requires light, or where light is a requirement for it to happen. The next thing, by now you should know what this chemical structure is, C6H12O6. This is glucose. The only equation that you would have learned where glucose is a product is photosynthesis. So 2, state the function of the process represented by the equation above. This is the process where plants make their own food. 3, identify the cell organelle in which the process represented by the equation above occurs. This process of photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. 4, identify the pigment responsible for capturing light in the process shown in the equation above. Chlorophyll, which is a green pigment that allows plants to capture light, to use it as an energy source for the process of photosynthesis. Then 5, state the name of each of the products shown in the equation above. You have C6H12O6 and you have O2. So this is glucose and this is oxygen. Now, as simple as that may seem, there are still some students that do not fully understand which side, or maybe under the pressures of exam, you may become a little confused in terms of which side is the substrate and which side is the products. Please remember, to every equation, especially one like this, where you have certain requirements, you have 3 parts. This first part here, which is your substrates, these are the things that are required for the process, so the raw materials basically. Then in this equation where you need light, and sometimes underneath I would put chlorophyll, this is the conditions. So the conditions necessary for the process to take place. The plant needs to be in light, so it could be sunlight or artificial light, and the plant of course needs to have chlorophyll. And then you have this part which is after the head of the arrow. This is the products. So your products is what is made from your raw materials under these conditions, and this is what you get. So your products is always on this side of the arrow, so after the head of the arrow. So in this case it would be the glucose and the oxygen being the answer. Then we have part B. So explain how each of the products shown in the equation on page 13 is critical to the survival of other organisms. So we have named the products, we have identified it to be glucose and oxygen. So again, if it is, you got that part wrong in terms of identifying what the products were, then automatically you would get this part wrong. So be careful when answering your questions. So glucose is important for all living organisms, plants or animals, because glucose is that raw material that is used for the process of respiration. So for respiration, which is the process by which organisms make their energy in the form of ATP, glucose is used. We know that we have 2 types of respiration. We have aerobic and anaerobic. The only difference between the two is that anaerobic respiration occurs in the absence of oxygen, while aerobic respiration takes place with oxygen being present. Anaerobic respiration makes way less ATP or energy than aerobic respiration does, because aerobic respiration is the complete breakdown of glucose. So common factor between the two, you definitely need that glucose. So without glucose, no energy could be made. And then oxygen is required for aerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration, as I had explained before, creates large quantities of ATP. So this is where you would get or where we get the majority of our energy from this process, which requires us to have or be in the presence of oxygen. Then we have part C. So an agricultural engineer is developing two different varieties of sweet potato, A and B, as shown in figure 5 and 6. So you have variety 4. Variety A has non-variegated leaf, while variety B has variegated leaves. So what they want us to explain, part 1, explain which variety, A or B, is likely to produce a greater yield of sweet potatoes. So if you could recall from, I'm not sure if you would have done the experiment in school, but I think you should have at least touched on it, if not physically done the experiment. But you would have done an experiment between variegated leaves and non-variegated leaves to show or to see where you would have the where you would get a positive iodine test. Iodine test, as we know, it is to prove or to show that there is starch. Starch is a form in which sugars or glucose is stored in plants. With the variegated leaves, it is only in the parts that had the green pigment, which is the chlorophyll. This is where you would have seen that blue-black color showing a positive starch test. So the difference with these two here, it would be expected that type A would have a greater yield of sweet potatoes, and this is because the entire leaf or all of the leaves has chlorophyll. So it has way more chlorophyll than the variegated leaf variety. Thus, that means that it's going to have increased photosynthesis. If it has increased photosynthesis, then that means that more food is going to be produced. That food is glucose, which is going to be stored as starch. And as we know with sweet potatoes or any root crops, this is where starch is stored. So therefore, there's going to be way more starch to store. Thus, you are going to have more sweet potatoes being formed. And then part 2 suggests the test the engineer would have to conduct to confirm the major food group found in the sweet potatoes. That would be the iodine test.